My mother knocked on my door at 9 o'clock at night. That never happened. In our house, once the lamps were low and the day was done, nobody knocked on anybody's door. But there she was, standing in the frame of it, holding a small quilted bag I had never seen before, telling me to come sit with her before I slept. I was getting married in 11 hours, and I did not yet know that the conversation I was about to have would matter more than the wedding itself. My name is Naomi. I was 21 years old, and this is the story of the night before my wedding. Not the ceremony, not the vows, not the 300 guests who would arrive the next morning. Just one quiet conversation in a lamplit bedroom that changed how I understood everything that came after. But first, you need to understand what I thought that conversation would be about. Because I had assumptions. Every young woman in our community did. I grew up hearing whispers about the talk, the conversation a mother has with her daughter on the eve of her wedding. Older girls spoke about it in careful, half-embarrassed tones. Some said it was about the wedding night itself, practical and brief. Others said it was about something deeper, something nobody could quite describe until they had lived through it themselves. I had spent weeks imagining what my mother would say. I was wrong about almost all of it. She sat on the edge of my bed. She set the quilted bag down beside her, unopened. And she looked at me for a long moment before she spoke. The kind of look that measures a person, that tries to see not just who you are, but who you are about to become. I remember the smell of the lamp oil, the particular way it mixed with the cedar smell of my cedar chest, sitting closed in the corner, already packed for the move to my new household the next day. I remember the sound of my younger sisters breathing in the next room, asleep and unaware of what was happening just beyond their wall. Everything about that house, in that moment, felt like it was already becoming a memory, even though I had not yet left it. She said, "Naomi, tomorrow you stop being only a daughter, and I need you to understand what that means before the sun comes up." I remember the cold of the room. Our house did not waste wood heating bedrooms overnight, and I remember pulling the quilt tighter around my shoulders, my breath faintly visible in the lamplight, waiting for whatever was coming. What came was not what I expected at all. She did not speak about intimacy, not directly, not in the way the whispered rumors had suggested. What she spoke about instead was harder, in its own way, to hear. She spoke about invisibility. She told me that tomorrow, in the eyes of our community, I would begin disappearing into a role. That the girl who asked questions at supper, who had opinions about the garden layout, who sometimes laughed too loud at her brother's jokes, that girl would still exist. But fewer and fewer people would think to ask her what she thought. That my name would slowly become attached to Eli's name in every conversation, in every mention, in every piece of correspondence, until people stopped fully seeing me as separate from him at all. I want you to sit with that for a second, the way I had to sit with it that night. Because it was not a warning meant to frighten me away from marriage. It was something more complicated than that. It was preparation. Have you ever had someone try to warn you about something before it happened to you? Something you could not fully understand until you had lived inside it yourself? That is exactly what this felt like. I nodded along. I thought I understood, and I had no idea how much I did not understand at all. She told me this had happened to her. That somewhere in the first years of her own marriage, she had noticed people speaking to my father about decisions that concerned her without thinking to ask her opinion first. That it had taken her years to understand this was happening, and longer still to decide what she wanted to do about it. Then she opened the quilted bag. Inside was not what I expected either. Not linens, not the practical household items I had assumed a mother might pass to a daughter on the eve of marriage. Inside was a small stack of letters, tied with the same brown cord my own grandmother had once used, and a single blank notebook with a plain leather cover. She told me the letters were hers, written to herself over the first 5 years of her marriage, in moments when she needed to remember who she was underneath the role she was stepping into. She had never shown them to anyone. Not my father, not her own mother. She was showing them to me now, the night before my wedding, because she wanted me to understand something she had learned too late to fully use herself. She said, "The role will try to swallow you. Not because Eli is unkind, he is a good man, and I believe that, but because the role itself is larger than any one person's kindness. It has its own gravity, and the only way I know to survive it with yourself intact is to keep something written down somewhere that only belongs to you. I did not fully understand what she meant that night. I want to be honest about that. I nodded, and I took the notebook, and I thanked her, and I thought I understood more than I actually did. I understood it 18 months later. Here is the strange thing about warnings like that. They do not fail because they are wrong. They fail because they arrive before you have the experience to hold them. My mother handed me the truest thing she knew, and I filed it away like a nice sentiment, a piece of wedding night wisdom, something to think about later. I did not know that later would arrive so quietly I would almost miss it. It happened slowly, the way she had described, not through any single moment of unkindness from Eli, but through the accumulating weight of small things. A decision about our household finances made in a conversation between Eli and the deacon that I only heard about afterward. A neighbor asking Eli in front of me what our family's plans were for the coming season, as though the question belonged naturally to him and not to both of us. My own opinions, offered less and less frequently, not because they were silenced, but because I had noticed, gradually, that offering them required more energy than simply letting the moment pass. I remember the exact evening I finally opened that notebook. It had sat empty on my shelf for a year and a half, a plain leather cover gathering dust, a promise I had made to my mother and quietly let slide. I opened it on a night when I felt something my mother had warned me about. That particular sensation of being spoken about rather than spoken to, of existing at the edge of my own life rather than the center of it. I wrote one sentence that night. I still remember exactly what it said. I wrote, "I am still here, even when no one asks." That single sentence became the beginning of something. Not a rebellion, not a rejection of my marriage or my community or the life I had chosen. Something quieter and, I think, more sustainable than rebellion. A private practice of remembering myself, page by page, even while the outward shape of my life continued exactly as expected. I still have that notebook. It is nearly full now, years later. And some nights when the house is quiet and Eli is already asleep, I still open it and write a single sentence, the same way my mother did before me, the same way her mother may have done before her, for all I know, in some other version of that quilted bag passed down through some other lamplit night. I still have that notebook. It is nearly full now, years later. And some nights when the house is quiet and Eli is already asleep, I still open it and write a single sentence, the same way my mother did before me, the same way her mother may have done before her, for all I know, in some other version of that quilted bag passed down through some other lamplit night. Sometimes I wonder how many quilted bags like that exist in how many houses across our community. How many mothers have sat on the edge of a bed the night before a wedding, holding a small collection of private truth, deciding whether their daughter was ready to receive it. I will never know the full answer to that. But I know that mine was not the only one. I know that somewhere in the careful, quiet architecture of our community, women have been passing down this particular kind of survival for longer than anyone talks about. I think about my mother's knock on my door often. 9 o'clock, 11 hours before my wedding, holding a bag I did not understand yet. I think about how much courage it must have taken her to hand her daughter the private evidence of her own struggle, on the one night when everyone else was focused on lace and hymns and seating arrangements for 300 guests. I want to ask you something tonight. Is there a role in your own life, a title, a relationship, a version of yourself that other people expect, that has slowly, quietly started to swallow the parts of you that do not fit inside it? And if there is, I want to ask you something more specific. Do you have a place, however small, where you still write down that you are still here, even when no one asks? Because I believe that is the real preparation nobody tells you about, not what happens on your wedding night. What happens in all the ordinary nights after it, when you have to decide, again and again, quietly and privately, that you still belong to yourself. My mother gave me that gift the night before my wedding. I am trying to give it to you tonight.